Hello, WoW players. This is my impressions of the at least the arcane buffs to in patch 5.1 now. Yeah. Because wow, yeah. Since I know it's been a week since they came out, but I needed to try it out in multiple different scenarios. So I play an Arcane Mage. Because it's kind of relevant, I do play a gnome. So I have 315,000 mana, not 300,000 mana. OMG, so broken, I know. But since the buffs did increase arcane charges from 22 to 25% per charge, that gives an extra 3 times 6 charges, 18% buff. And over the long run, that's a big deal. But people look at that and they're like, oh, that's not that big. I mean, unless you really know how to play an Arcane Mage and you understand what an Arcane charge is. But most people reading the patch notes just see that as a 3% buff, and it's not that big a deal. Where the buff actually comes in is the fact that the Arcane Charges debuff went down in mana cost. Well, Arcane Blast went down in scaling mana cost from 125% to 75%. Now, pretty much before, everything was the Arcane Blast cost so stupid amount of mana that you pretty much felt boxed in to using Rune of Power. This is not the case, because Rune of Power allowed you to, before Rune of Power allowed so much passive mana regeneration that you could actually make use of your, mana, your mastery for so long with, Arcane Adept. You could make use of it longer. Plus you got, but not many fights, at least in the first part of the rating, were you standing still. There's a few in Heart of Fear and Terrace of the Springs that I could see where you could pretty much stand still. But also a buff to Rune of Power, if you still want to use it, is that you can recast it like twice. You can just recast it's almost instantaneous. You don't have to wait for that weird 6 seconds anymore. Plus the duration is now on your buff bar. So that, while that's not necessarily a big deal because it has this flashing animation when it's about ready to go, you can track it. It makes it easier for add-ons to track it so they can time it. Because they don't track things without duration very well, like static buffs like Mage Armor or, much of anything. However, with a duration on there, it can track it better. That's really all that kind of was about. And to help with players so they could say, oh, well, I've got 15 seconds left because the thing starts flashing at like 5. And if you lose that rune for even just a second, sometimes you can be screwed. So, it's eggnog season. Shut up. I run with Encounter's Ward because while it's not necessary to have as much, it allows for a lot more mobility with Encounter's Ward. And you don't get 100% of your mana regeneration, but you do get 65% of the mana regeneration as a passive. And then when you're absolutely really low on fights that, you can boost it up there. You can get some mana back and have the big boost. Invocation could work really well. Right now, I can ride a 6-stack for a while. So, I can't ride it indefinitely, but I can ride it for a while. A lot longer than before. It's like I was clearing the stack at 4 or 5 because I could not afford it. And I do have a 484 item level. So, part of that is the fact that my haste has gone up so much. But I think it's the fact that, Arcane Charge is not making Arcane Blast cost nearly as much. I foresee this also being kind of nerfed. It seems to almost be too perfect. Like, I can ride a 6-stack for a while, but I don't, if I was sitting in a Rune of Power, I may be able to cast it indefinitely. So anyways, that's my take on Arcane. I didn't really read the Frost stuff. It seemed to be like bug fixes for Icy Veins, the glyph of Icy Veins, and then some tweaking with Fire, because Fire was kind of out of control with DPS. People were like, well, it's the best. Well, it was out of control. A lot of the really out of control DPS that you've seen on World of Vlogs and stuff got a little bit of nerfs, and people were like, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. It's called game balance. You know, for Wrath and Kata, it was like king of the range, king of the caster DPS was Arcane, and now all of a sudden it's the bottom. And Blizzard was like, why? What did we do wrong? So they fixed that. But Fire's supposed to be up there. They probably buffed Frost a little bit. I didn't read all the changes. I'm a bad mage. I get it. But anyways, that's that. I hope this helps anybody who happens to watch this.